Join the team.
Hey, theMCGuiRE Review, and today we're going to take a look at Wizkids, one of Wizkids' newer games, which is Dungeons & Dragons Onslaught. Now, this has been out for a little while. It's been out for a little while, and we're just doing a video on it. And again, this is just kind of I like to sit on these games a little longer now. I don't want to just get the game and pump it out, for the views after a week, and you're just hearing whatever hype I'm currently feeling. I want to sit on these games for a little bit. I want to play them for a little bit. I do have a little scenario set up here just for an example. And then be able to kind of give you my real thoughts on the game. We'll do a little overview of the game, and we'll look at some of the product offerings that they currently have for the Onslaught game. Now, we are going to be doing a video coming up very soon on Trials of Tempest here. This is good. We're going to be doing a video here coming up pretty soon on this one. Another recent release by Wizkids. They're really doing a great job with some of these titles here. Now, there are things about this game that I absolutely love. There are things about this game that maybe could have been approached a little bit differently. How would it have changed the design and the tactics? I don't know, because obviously I wasn't part of creating this game or playtesting this game, but I do have a couple points that I want to cover. But there's a lot of things here that I really, really like, and I think there's a lot of things here that a lot of people are going to like. Now, just to hit, we'll get this out of the way, just to hit what we've got out there. You've got the base game you can get, okay? Everything that's down here, and there's other things you can't see as well that are down here. You get quite a bit of stuff with the base game. They're all pre-painted miniatures, which is nice. Most people are going to like that versus just a bunch of gray plastic. It's all pre-painted, really nicely done miniatures. You're going to get in here. You're going to get 2 factions in here, and monsters as well will be included in that box. A number of different monsters. We'll talk about why. You're going to get there. You're going to get some really nice high-quality counters. Some people have a problem with these. I will say that sometimes if you kind of bump them, they can kind of lose their spot if these little wheels are loose. I have found that if you just kind of grab them and just give them an extra little push, sometimes they'll tighten a little bit. And I've been able to do that on most of them, and it's been okay. But I will say that if you do bump these and they move, it's like you got to remember where the little wheel number was, and there are people that have a problem with that. I'm not sure how else they would have done this. You would have just had a ton of dice being able to track all this stuff. So I did think these components were actually pretty cool. But there is a little bit of a downside to them if you do get some that are really loose. You're just going to have to be careful with them that you don't bump them. I think they're higher quality components. Some people, have just been like, oh, this is not... It is a high quality component. It's just, it does have a little bit of a usability issue. These right here need to be tighter. Where these clips go in, they need to be more snug. They need to be tighter, so it takes a little bit more force to actually push them. Or they need to just fully upgrade them to something that's like plastic with a little bit of a clicker. But keep that price under control if they're going to go that route. Okay. Number of things you get here. You do not get this in the base game. It is important to understand northwest, east, and south. Because of how things activate when you get to enemies across the board. They will kind of activate from the northwest corner and kind of come across the board. This is a nice little token that I had, so I just kind of put it there whatever way is north, so then the players can easily see the directions. Now, they have released a number of expansions that you can get. They've got these bigger box expansions here that you can get, where you'll get a whole new faction. So generally these smaller box ones here, you're getting miniatures and you're getting, it's kind of the same stuff that's coming in this, but these are generally not new factions. They're expansions to factions that have already been released. So that's what you'll kind of get here in these smaller expansion faction boxes. These are really cool. Again, you get basically a team of miniatures, their cards, their counters, anything that you would need to kind of play with more miniatures of a particular faction that you might like. And then you get these bigger boxes here, which really expand onto new factions. And that's what you're going to find here. We've got 2 of them. There's a number of these smaller boxes that have been released. There's 3 more here that you can see. These are all expansions to either the base factions in the game or these bigger box factions that they've now released. And they got a brand new product here that is designed for giving you more scenarios. So this is a scenario-based 2-player game, 2-player only. You could play a 4-player, I guess, if you did 2-on-2 and you had people controlling different, characters, and you decided that, hey, you control these 2, I can control these 2 or 3, and that's just how you're going to play. That's fine, I guess, but it's really designed as a Wits vs. Wits 2-player miniatures tactical board game. It reminds me, and this is why I was so excited about this Onslaught game, it reminds me of the original D&D miniature skirmish game. It's from years and years ago, probably 15 years ago I played that game and really thought it was cool. And this really reminded me of that, and that's why I was really excited about it. And it does give that same feel, but there's one extra mechanic that they do, which is these scenarios. And these scenarios not only provide key points around the board for the players' teams to be able to try to acquire, to gain victory points, because it isn't just, hey, I wipe your team. If time runs out and you have the most victory points, you could be the winner. So you do acquire victory points as you play the game through those scenarios. And it'll be different things. You might be escorting someone somewhere. You might be trying to get to specific chests and loot around the board. You might be trying to kill specific monsters. There's a number of things, and that's why you get the monster miniatures included here as well. So you can put those monsters and those different things on the board, and they'll go specific places based on the scenario. And you, as a player, can choose when it's your turn to do a number of things. Do you try to attack the other player's team, characters? Do you go for a loot in a chest as part of the scenario? Do you actually go and try to defeat one of the monsters and fight one of the monsters on the board? Because you'll get victory points for all of these different things in different ways. Sometimes it's more victory points if you take out some of these larger monsters. So that may be something that you want to do as a player to kind of rack up those victory points if, in fact, it gets down to the end of the game and you haven't completely wiped the other player's team. That's going to make the difference of you winning or losing. Okay? These expansions, and again, this one, there's a number of scenarios that are included in the base game, and they're all completely different, which I thought was really cool. That every time you set up the board, there's like little walls and barriers and different chests, and you'll do one side of the map or the other side, and there's like portals you can jump through, and the monsters are in different places, and it's completely set up different. I mean, sometimes you're on a treasure hunt, sometimes you're escorting, a prisoner. Sometimes you're on a hunt for a specific type of thing. It's totally different every time you play, and that's what makes this really fun. I think that brings you back to the table. For me, those just my team versus your team, that's fun for a while, but then it kind of burns out. And where I think they did a nice job with the design is they gave you that kind of adventure that you're on as well. And that's where I think these are actually a really cool product in addition to this game. You may not want to get all this stuff and build out and buy more factions. You may not want any more miniatures for the particular faction that you have. You may like the miniatures that came in the base game, and that's all you want, and that's fine. You don't have to go any further than that. But once you play all the scenarios 2 or 3 times, you may say, well, I want more. Well, this, I think well-priced product is what really adds nicely onto this is now it gives you a bunch more scenarios that are different than what you got in the base game. They come with the special counters, they come with the monsters, they come with the scenario sheets, they come with everything that you need to build out another scenario. You're not going to get a new map in these. It's not going to be a new one of these boards. At least they haven't released anything like that yet. Probably would be smart for them to do so. Probably some type of map expansion pack they could release where you get 2 more of these boards that give you a different look and feel. Okay? Come with some type of stuff like this. But they haven't done that yet. But this I do highly recommend in addition to the base game. Okay? Now, that kind of covers all of the the items that come with this. We kind of went over sort of the base feel of the game and how the game works. It does have a very D&D feel as well, obviously, because of the theme, right? It's a Dungeons & Dragons game. If you don't know anything about Dungeons & Dragons and you just like these miniature tactical games, you'll like this game. But if you know about Dungeons & Dragons, you play Dungeons & Dragons, the theme is rich and it adds to the experience as well. Now, there definitely are some things that are different from how you can move and how you can attack and the different types of like how many actions you have and what you can do for what. There are some differences in this game where you'll be like, hang on, if I'm playing D&D, I can move diagonally. In this game, you can't move diagonally. Okay, you can go up, down, left, right. You can attack diagonally, but you can't move diagonally. The reason is because if you could move diagonally on a board that's this small, you'd be blasting all over the place, and it wouldn't be as tactical. You wouldn't have to set up as many maybe turns or think through how you want to get from A to B if you were able to move diagonally. So that is a limitation in this game. Some may not like that you can't move diagonally. You got all the squares on the board just like you would any Dungeons and Dragons map. At first, I didn't like that. After I got to playing this game for a while, I thought, okay, I understand the design now of like why they did that from a movement restriction perspective. And it does still play very tactically, and I don't have any problem with it at this point. But my first couple games, I was like, why did they do this? But I get it now, and I'm perfectly okay with it, and I think it actually works really well. The line of sight actually is interesting in this game as well, where you draw a corner to like 3 of their corners. If you can't do that, they could have cover, or they might be behind a wall and you can't hit them at all based on what's printed on the map, or little items that you set on the map that are kind of like makeshift walls or doors. That's all there. I love the fact that you can like upgrade your gear and your loot. You can even upgrade your character. In this game, you can kind of level up and upgrade your character, which is really cool. You get extra like spells and skills. You will have spells and skills that will come with these characters, and as you play, you can upgrade those things. They get more powerful, which is neat. You got all your standard sort of like, you can get dazed or stunned or cursed or poisoned. You can get it, inspired. I mean, it's all the standard stuff that you would do when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. When it comes to the actions, you've got standard actions, you've got bonus actions, you've got movement actions. You can trade out one action type for other types of action types, which you can do when you're playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. But there are some things that are a little bit different here that you wouldn't do in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So that's just something to know if you're a regular D&D player. When you play this, there's some things you're going to be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I know exactly how that rule set works. And there's other things you're going to be like, oh, that's different. You can't do that in 5th edition. So I thought that was really cool, too. But again, anytime you take these types of things and you have to adapt them to a tabletop board game, there are some things you're going to have to modify and tweak. And I think they did a really nice job in being able to do that. Okay? So let's talk about some of the things. I think that's a good overview of kind of the mechanics of the game. You are going to go... The last thing I'll mention is like your turn order. You are going to go in an initiative, much like you would do in Dungeons & Dragons. You basically get these initiative cards, and there's a specific way you'll sort them and pass them out, and then you as players will kind of lock in the initiative that you want your characters to go on. The monsters will always go on a preset initiative, and it's by halves, so they'll be like 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, things like that. So they'll go in between the character players, and then you just go around when you play in initiative order, round by round. So that works very similar to how you would do combat in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, where you'll go by initiative, and that's pretty cool. So I thought that was neat that they implemented that, and it wasn't like just back and forth, or I get to go with all my characters, and you get to go with all your characters. It is a specific initiative order. It does take a little bit longer to go through that way, I think, versus just you just making a bunch of quick decisions and moving your squad. But it does feel more tactical from that perspective. Which I like, where like you can respond right after your opponent has done something. generally, unless the initiative obviously is going to give them maybe. I've seen situations where 3 of your characters can go before your opponent because it just happened to go that way per initiative. So, just like it would in real Dungeons & Dragons. So that's very cool as well. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the things that I think they can continue to improve on as this game gets further developed out. And I think they can change that and they can improve on that with some of these releases on the scenarios. One of the things that I thought was a little bit odd was the play time. You're looking at about an hour and a half once you know how to play. You're looking at about an hour and a half to get through a game. And that's generally a little on the long side when you're talking about just a 1v1 miniature skirmish game. Most of the 1v1 small miniature skirmish games really should be within that hour and 10 mark. Once you're going to 90 plus minutes, it gets a little long. I'll say that's a little long for gameplay for a game like this. However, it's a fun 90 minutes, and it is a fun 90 minutes. Now, I will say, as you continue to go through those rounds, the further along you get in those rounds, the snappier and the faster those rounds get. The first few rounds feel like they're long. And when you think, oh my gosh, I got to go X number of more rounds, and it's already been this much time, like, are we going to get through this game, right? Once you get past those first few rounds, it does get really snappy to kind of go through the rounds because characters will get killed off. Certain things will happen that will just kind of move the game faster. It scales faster the closer it gets to the end, which I love from a design perspective as well. I like games that do that because it makes you it ramps up that end game when it starts moving faster. That's a good design, I think, in any type of game. So that's the first thing that I would mention is, I don't know if there could have been anything there done to kind of pull that back to say, hey, holistically, this should be about a 60-minute experience at most, and like a way to get away from that 90-minute experience and kind of at a 60-minute experience for something like this. But again, a lot of people that play these types of games, that hour and a half's not going to bother them. I mean, you got to think about a lot of miniature tactical games like this. They're hours and hours long games, right? But I think that would have been a bonus star, right, for this title if they could have done it within that 60-minute mark. Just my opinion. But again, my opinion, I've had a great time within the 90-minute framework as well. That's the first thing. The second thing I'm going to mention, and it's probably not unheard of. You've probably heard this a number of times. You probably heard this more than anything about this title, is the price tag on this. That's a hard one because the MSRP to this game is $140. Now, it doesn't cost $140. You can get this game for significantly cheaper than $140 on a lot of different sites. And the price of this game does continue to kind of go down, which I think is good. But this came out strong with a $140 price tag, and they ripped through them, and they sold a lot of copies. They did really well with it initially, even at that MSRP. Now, again, I don't think most people were getting probably the game at 130, 125. I don't know wherever they were buying it, but they were still kind of getting that price. It's kind of a tough one because when you look at all the components that are involved, I do think they are higher quality components for the most part. But, if these things were like plastic tokens, okay, for that price, you are getting a ton of, well, not a ton, but you're getting a decent amount of pre-painted miniatures. One of the gripes here has been, well, you didn't really have to incur the costs of all new sculpts being produced and manufactured for this game. All these sculpts are reused sculpts. They're all sculpts that already exist in their catalog of already delivered, molded miniatures. I believe every single one of them. And, that definitely drops costs because you're not creating a miniature brand new. but you're only creating certain ones, and it's just those ones over and over within the box. So, there's a little balance there in cost. They are what I would consider the higher quality painted miniatures. I would compare these to probably more of their kind of premium line that they offer. They got really good paint jobs on them. They look really good. For mass manufactured miniatures, they look good. They look pretty good. But if they would have came out with maybe an $89.99 MSRP or a $99.99 MSRP, even with the painted miniatures, that probably would have sat a little bit better with folks after they got it kind of at, the third party places. But that's the other thing that I would mention. I don't want to harp on it too much longer. There is a little bit of a price point with this one, but I think the thing is, you're just going to have to make the decision of, is this the type of game, the type of theme, and something you're going to play a lot? If it is, then it's probably worth it to you. And they're really creating a system here that once you kind of buy in, I would say probably a little bit of this higher price, you can, like I said at the beginning, you got that, and hopefully they just continue to release things like this to just make what you get in the base better and better and better, and you can just add it out. You don't have to buy all this other stuff, if you don't want to get new squads, right, new teams. There could be things they could do go forward where they just release like the cards and whatnot, and the counters that go with squads, and not the miniatures, and you can proxy your own miniatures in if you already happen to have miniatures. That's a possibility. I don't know if they're going to do that or not. But from a marketing perspective, that's a possibility as well for people who have already invested a lot in these types of miniatures and already have 100 of them sitting in their house because they're a DM or whatnot. Now they can just get sort of like this and the cards, and you don't need the miniatures, and you can proxy in your own stuff. Because the artwork that are on these things is fairly generic. Sometimes they don't even look like the actual. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell which one is which. They're very generically done, which I think was smart, because then you can proxy in your own stuff for the cards that you already have. If you don't like these models, if you don't like this wizard, you can proxy in your own wizard model, right? And you can do that as well. So that's everything that I'll mention. Just that price point there, and maybe some of the stuff you might creatively want to do with this system as you go forward. But it's really something that I think they can flesh out and continue to build out and make richer and richer and richer from an ecosystem perspective. I could see this being a big deal at conventions go forward, having tournaments. They've already done stuff like that. I can see them doing tons of special miniatures that you could win, or promos that you could win, or promos for this game. So there's a lot, I think, when you get into these tactical miniatures type games that you could really build out. So that's what Onslaught's all about. Hopefully this overview, if you didn't really know much about this game, or you shied away from this game because of the price point, I definitely know they probably lost some people initially because of the price point on this. Hopefully this video has really helped you to kind of understand what you get in this system and the fun that can be had, because I've had a great time with the game so far. It's been a lot of fun, but again, I'm a person who loves the theme. I like the D&D combat system. The monsters, right? It's oh, there's that type of monster, right? It's the characters, the different factions. It all kind of is fun to me and for me. So I really love the game, and I've had a great time with it. So hopefully if you decide to pick this up, you'll have a great time with it as well. And try to get it at the best price that you can, because again, the prices are coming considerably down from that original MSRP. So hopefully you can get this game for a great price and check it out. Or if you're at a convention, you can sit down and demo it and get some exposure that way. Again, team, we're going to be doing a video on Trials of the Tempest coming up pretty soon. This is a great game as well. I can't wait to get that video. Should be coming really, really soon. And with that, team, keep rolling them crits. This has been the McGuire Review, and we'll see you next time.